Gaby Sundra. What a great conversation with Gaby. She's a love therapist. And one of her mantras that she was taught a while ago: keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And she talks to couples about their relationships, about keeping it close, keeping communication, keeping intention. I first ask about what is it, what the responsibilities of being a love coach are. What do you do in these relationships? She has these, she calls them games. One's called the Yum Menu, and it's fascinating what happens there. You're going to love it. Drama-free diet. When you're being blaming or criticizing or complaining, what happens? What do you do? And there's something called OCC: ownership, compassion, and creativity. She has these tools, or games that she uses. She still uses this to this day. Her history, her background is very interesting, where she didn't get married into her late 30s, and there was a lot of learning that needed to be done there. But it's a great discussion on relationships and how important they are, and where love and happiness fall in to what we do every day. Really enjoyed this conversation with Gaby Sundra. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic. I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Oh my goodness, Gaby Sundra, I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here. So, in relationships, how can we keep the fights clean and the sex dirty?
I love it. You must have seen my website there, right? Keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty. When my husband and I got married, there was a couple there that had been married for years and years, and that was the advice that they gave to us, and we thought that's fantastic advice, because most often couples, they're kind of nasty when it comes to the arguments. They let things slip away and become more like roommates and vanilla until it's, the hot coals of passion have turned to dust and ash. So we like that reminder. We like fun. We like play. Personal development seems so significant. Relationships can be so significant. So wherever you can, where can we bring some lightness and play to those two areas of treating each other well, handling conflict well, and keeping things passionate, not just in physical intimacy, but actually just passionate in life. I actually talk about play, peace, and passion as the love trifecta, right? Because if you have a playmate, you have a sanctuary, and you have a lover, then you got it all in love, right?
Yeah, that is true. And you talk about, well, the marriage that you're in now was kind of late in life, and so you both wanted to kind of get things straight, and you approached it very differently and very methodical, I may say.
Yes, well, he is also from an engineering background, but by the time we met, I was 36 and he was 38, almost 39. And we were both involved in being as great a people as we could. I had been engaged and in an 8-year relationship, from like 17 to 25. So I had almost gotten married and thankfully hadn't, and seen a lot of my friends were divorcing. So I was like, okay, before I jump into this. And he was different than any person I had ever really dated before. People talk about butterflies, and I had had butterflies before, but with Raj, it felt like getting into a warm bath, drinking a cold glass of Chardonnay. It just felt like I could uncurl my toes and relax. And I realized that all those butterflies before was anxiety because I couldn't
Mm,
be myself, because I felt that somebody wanted me to be something or look a certain way, or I just wasn't embraced for being me exactly who I was in that entirety. And I think that's what all of us are craving, because we all got booted out of the womb one way or another and we're looking for
mm.
belonging. Right? And if we can't find that with our beloved, then that really does threaten that, as I mentioned, that sanctuary, that sense of peace. Is if our beloved and us are in conflict, then you're really not going to be at rest in even the other areas in life.
Gabby, is it less difficult to get into a serious relationship in your late 30s or more?
Well, serious is the word that it would trip me up. I would
Mm.
refer to it as intentional. And it could be, let's say it's a 3-month relationship. I'm definitely of the perspective that love is so special and delightful that we should go for it whenever it bites us in the butt. Right. And that might be that you discover, okay, 3 months into it, maybe this isn't the person for me, but thank you for those last 3 months. This was just so
Hmm.
helpful for me. I had someone once say to me, "Oh, I've met this great person, but we're taking it slow." And I said, "Well, why are you taking it slow?" And they said, "Well, I don't want to get hurt." I said, "Well, you can
Mm.
give up on that because you are guaranteed to fail. Because if you love someone, you are absolutely going to be hurt. You don't get
Mm.
front of the hand with back of the hand. You don't get life without death, and you don't get love without pain." I'm not a
Mm.
sadist, but it's just the nature of caring about somebody, the nature
Hmm.
of becoming intimate is vulnerable. And so when you're trying to go into a relationship avoiding being hurt, you're barking up the wrong tree because it's just not really possible. It's not possible.
Mm.
And so I like to look at the hurt or those problems as actually being the lessons that we've chosen, that we've somehow subconsciously chosen to open up our childhood wounds so we have a chance at healing them. But we have to be responsible enough to know that those are our childhood wounds, what we need to heal them, and then be willing to help teach our beloved those skills. The cool part, and by the way, this whole theory is called imago therapy, this particular premise. But the challenge and benefit is if you are willing to teach your beloved those skills, they become a more integrated person. And let me give you an
Mm.
example because that's kind of theoretical. My husband and I, when we met, I was much more in my masculine and detached from my feminine side, and he
Hmm.
was much more in touch with his feminine side and detached from his masculine side. He would be emotional, and small things would set him off. I would think that something's not a problem unless you're losing a limb. I'd be like, "Get up, you ain't
Mm.
hurt. You call that a problem? There's people starving all over the world and world conflict, right?" I was just like, "Get up,
Mhm.
you ain't hurt." What we didn't realize, even in our late 30s, was that I grew up with 9 aunts who all married fairly poorly, and most of them
Right.
referred to men as dead weight. So
Mm.
when my partner was emotional or needed my support, it was like, "Oh, great, one more person for me to have to take care of."
Mm.
And I had a job that was about taking care of people. And I didn't realize that I was cut off from my nurturing side of being there for the people who needed me and were asking for my help. Now, my husband, his father passed when he was 12, and the whole family did not grieve, they just coped. And so he spent his whole adult life grieving because he was desperate to be comforted. And he
Hmm.
chose somebody who's like, "Get up, you ain't hurt."
Mm.
there's
Mm.
no accident in that, and there was no accident that I chose someone who desperately needed to be comforted and nurtured during those difficult times. So once we stopped blaming each other for those disagreements and actually looked at how we chose those and how those were perfect for our own growth and development, essentially giving up our right to blame, that's when the conflict started to dramatically drop, and the growth and development, the transformation really started to happen. Because really, most couples leave a relationship just when the transformation's getting really good. Not to say everybody should stay together, but way too often I find couples leave just when it's getting good.
You mentioned that you were on more of your masculine side, he was more on the feminine side. It's interesting that we assign kind of masculine or sexes or genders, whatever, to a particular. I like, as you could tell, I ask a lot of questions and I like to listen, and so could that like level of communication be more of a feminine side?
Well, absolutely, and notice I'm not saying male and female, I'm saying masculine and feminine,
Yeah.
right? There's a distinct difference there, and so because, a man could be far in touch with his feminine side, right? So that's why I distinguish between the masculine and feminine. I'm not talking about male and female. It's just those qualities that are more traditionally associated with that, even being,
Hmm.
physically speaking, receptive versus directive, right? In the
Mm.
puzzle pieces of our biology. Um, and it helped us to actually, like, I had to learn even like when we got married, we went to take dance lessons for the first dance at our wedding, and we discovered in one's dance lesson what we needed was I needed to learn to follow, and he needed to learn to lead.
Interesting.
We didn't need any dance moves. So even at that level of the masculine and feminine, of the being directive versus being receptive, and to listening to, not that he should be one way and I should be the other, but just to being conscious of when we were doing one versus the other, and what was most helpful and beneficial and what was falling into a reactive trap. Because all of your strengths are
Mm.
your weaknesses, and all of your weaknesses are your strengths. Everything that happened to you, those wounds, all helped you develop fantastic skills. You just want to
Hmm.
make sure that they're not running you, but you're actually intentional about those strengths and weaknesses.
Getting back to you know, having your relationship in your 30s. Now, generally speaking, I feel that, women mature earlier than men. I mean, a man in their 20s is a child. I'm 55 and I'm just about entering adulthood, I feel. So it seems to me that when you're at that when you get to that 30s and late 30s, a woman is, more mature generally speaking. It would seem to me that if there's a problem, okay, let's talk about it. Let's do it. Whereas in your 20s, just screw off and just just kind of throw your hands up and go. You're kind of less patient, perhaps. But I guess that's why divorce rates are where they are in this country.
Just as I said, as people, check out just before the transformation's really getting good. And then on top of
Mm.
it, now we've got this whole swipe culture with dating. And there's I should know the part of the brain that has that dopamine hit, but that's exactly what we're looking for, is that part of our brain that's actually designed for, be like, what could be else? It's the FOMO. Right. And
Mm.
then when you hit some conflict and it's like, oh, I just need to swipe a few hundred more times and I'll find somebody else. But lo and behold, wherever you go, there you are, and you're most likely
Mm.
going to be having the same relationship. I do think that as you're older, and I agree with you about whether that's men or women. Um, I actually said to my husband when he turned 50, I don't think a man is really a man until he turns 50, right? There's a different energy. And
Great.
almost all the men I know, when they turn 50, there's this kind of relaxing and a less of a defense. And um, there's more of a knowing, so that they can listen more and be less directive, right? And the same thing with a woman, she doesn't have to be so vocal of her needs. She can actually get her needs met with a lot less effort, right?
Mm.
And so I think that certainly I needed to mature to choose my husband. I had to learn to trust my intuition and my body, and I don't mean chemistry. I mean actually trust my intuition. There's actually, you may be familiar with this, the vagus nerve. I think it's VAGUS, not VEGAS. This isn't the Las Vegas nerve, but it's when they say trust your gut. It's the nerve that goes all around your stomach and up your spine and around your brain, so
Hmm.
that when you have your spidey sense, that's coming from your gut. Trusting your gut is quite smart. But it took me a while to learn, one, to trust my intuition, and two, how to sense it, and three, what were the behaviors that cut down my intuition. For example, alcohol dramatically is going to cut down your ability to connect with your intuition and to read the subtle sensations, the cues that your body's trying to give you. It's like pulling on the levers, going, pull back there, or lean in, or go for it, or ooh, and I don't think so.
Yeah, very, very true. And you mentioned a couple points that I don't want to bypass. You say when a transition occurs, a lot of times that's when they separate. Explain.
Yes, the transition. Hold on one moment, because this app I thought was closed was not, and I got an alert. So I want to make sure that stays off. Okay. Okay. Sorry, that question again?
Transition, when that
Yes.
transition occurs, people separate. How come?
Well, because it's much easier, or so we think it's easier to pull the ejector seat,
Huh.
right? It's that part of our brain that thinks we can do better elsewhere, or the words that used to come to my mind and most people are, I don't need this shit. Right?
Mm,
And the reality is, once
mm,
when Raj and I got married, it was, okay, this is our shit. So what are we going to do to turn it into fertilizer to be a beautiful garden and really create something intentional and inspirational? And we really got into the habit of, instead of spending our energy focused on arguing about who's to blame for all the stuff we don't want, we started shifting our and spending our time, our energy, and our personal development focus on, what do I want individually? What does he want individually? And first off, just honoring those, that you're two different people. But then taking those two and looking for, where do we both agree? I want compassionate, respectful communication. Oh, you want that too? Okay, well, what can we do to have more compassionate, respectful communication? And
mm.
that habit is what we've been together 17 years, but it took us about 7 of those years until we turned it into a habit where 3 times a year we're looking at, what's most important to us as a couple right now. We have a shared vision, which I can share with you, and we'll look at that vision and say, what's true, most needed, and current and relevant right now, and how can we true up to that? So we're not waiting for the conflict and, it's clean up on aisle 4 and who's to blame, but instead it's, we want this, and over the next 90 days, how can we create more of that together? Not just as partners, but even as playmates, and make it fun. Because when you're like, hey, you want to play a game, instead of, we need to talk, it's just a completely different dynamic and a different interaction as your couple culture, and how you interact to create more of what you want, rather than
Hmm.
how you avoid being terrible and blaming each other in conflict. So it's not avoiding divorce. I call it aiming for awesome. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? That's the question.
Mm, mm. I follow a divorce attorney, and he told us a story once where he was defending the wife, the woman. When did you know the marriage was over? And she went on to say that she liked this particular granola that she would eat every morning, this particular brand, and every day he would, if it got low, I shouldn't say every day, but when it got low, he would replenish it. And just one day, it just wasn't that low, and she took it out of wherever it was and put it in a more visible place, and he didn't replenish it, and she knew it was over. When the relationship gets to a point where I'm so unhappy that I don't think the other person should be happy, the
Yes.
critical point, is
Yes.
that when they should look for a love coach?
Absolutely. Well, I would say early and often to look for a love coach, even when you aren't in a relationship yet. So those who are listening who are single, of creating that vision of what's communication like? What's it like with sex and intimacy? What's it like with relating with others or with personal development or with finances? And then if you are in a relationship to look at those for yourself and then look at them together so that you have that shared vision that you can keep truing up to. And then you have your early alert system, right? My husband and I, the first 3 years we were together, we didn't do it often, but if we got in a big conflict, we'd swear at each other. We'd call each other names minorly, but we would. And then we decided that's not good for creating trust between us and your most important person, right, in your life. So, I mean, some would argue your kids, but in 18 years, your kids, some of them, in most cases, will be gone. And so that relationship really needs to be put in the forefront. And it's just so easy for that to get pushed to the side. And then the kids are gone. And it's very common for those divorces to happen there. But fundamentally, you want to be encouraging couples when it gets to that point, um, to really look for themselves of what the upset is, to not let it get to that point of death by a thousand paper cuts, but to early and often, if you have gotten to the point where you in what I call a relationship ditch, I got you. There's processes to do to help you get out of the ditch. But if even if you're not in a relationship ditch yet, if things are not even if they're just fine, because I think fine is a slippery slope to effed up, right? That's
Mm.
dangerous, right? You want to be nurturing and moving towards the positive, just like when you build muscles, right? When you build muscles, if someone does yoga or something like that, they know if they even skip 2, 3 days, their muscles start atrophying. If you sit for even 3 hours and don't move, your body's going to be stiff. And it's the same thing with your relationship. You're either building or losing intimacy. So when you ask the
Mm.
question, when should we do something? It's habitual and early and often, because if you put your intention, attention, and action into your intimacy as a habit, then it takes it out of the realm of work and we need to talk and clean up on aisle four. And it puts it into partnership, play, and habit of your couple culture that you just live extraordinary lives. So you, of course, would have an extraordinary relationship. So even average, certainly not negative interaction, just isn't going to fly with you. It's going to be like, whoa, whoa,
Mm.
whoa, whoa. I just started working with a couple recently and they needed help because one of them told the other to shut up.
Mm.
And in some relationships, that's just like, whoa, you need to stop right there. We don't talk to each other like that. In other relationships, people are like, what? That's it? So, what you want to do is have a couple culture where even saying something like shut up is like glaring, right? You don't want those little things to be normal for you. What is normal in your relationship? And for my husband and I, that has dramatically changed over the years, and that it did
Mm.
not happen by accident. It happened by us 3 times a year saying, how can we be better now, and and really how can I be better now, because I never tell him how to grow and he never tells me how to grow.
Mm.
Right.
It's interesting, along with that point, how there's some things that I personally have. This is what I want in a relationship. I want this. These are the deal breakers. This is what I gotta have. And then they go into a relationship, and it's like, actually, no, that really wasn't that much of a deal breaker. Actually, I mean, like these things kind of slide as you get into a relationship, and you meeting another person with different values and different priorities and visions, etc.
Yes.
Not, not really a
Yes.
question there.
People are very different. Right?
Yeah.
People are very different. I like to call it BIBTO, though. Both is better than one, where you want to look
Right.
for the synergy of your differences. Look for where it looks like oil and water and actually translate that into where's the chocolate and peanut butter. I did a whole master class on healthy habits for introvert, extrovert couples last year. And this year I broadened it a little bit and I did it on be delighted by your differences and how you really can look. My husband's more of an introvert, I'm more of an extrovert. He's a
Mm.
detail oriented person, I'm a like get it done kind of person. And so between us, we used to have those things drive us crazy, but now we're looking for the synergy and the umbrella to bring that synergy to as a kind of our guiding light and our filter. Like if we're making a big choice, we come back to this vision. I call it our marriage mantra. And we come back to this vision of who we say we are and let that help us make our choice. Let that help us resolve the conflict. It's probably a good time. Let me share the mantra with you.
Please.
We used to have it posted on our dining room table, and we would just say it every day before dinner until it was memorized. And now, for example, today we had our once a week meeting. We've learned if we have a once a week meeting to talk about our goals, our calendar, and our budget, we remove 90% of our conflicts during the week, right?
Wow.
We're being very intentional. So we're having that meeting today, but at the start of that meeting, we say our relationship vision, our marriage mantra to each other. So we're just acknowledging that this is the foundation where we are coming back to again and again, that everything else we're going to talk about is going to come under this umbrella of this vision. So I say, and we say it at the same time to each other, or sometimes we'll throw it back and forth to each other. I love my marriage and my husband. He says, wife. We're playful, peaceful, and passionate. We're hot for each other and express it daily. We generate with intention. We communicate with care. We seek to spot, understand, and meet each other's needs and delights. We contribute to the world. We care for our bodies. We're on top of what is to be done and abundant with our finances, time, energy, and love. And you can see if we say that, it's specific but
Hmm.
general, but that's the general overarching year after year. But we take that 3 times a year and say, what's most important? Summertime, we say, how can we bring play to money, play to communication, play to sex? Then in the holidays season, peace. How can we bring peace to all of those areas? And then the beginning of the year is passion. How can we bring passion to communication, to my finances, to any of those areas of life of what's important to us in the moment?
Oh, that's beautiful, Gabby. What's the yum menu?
Ah, the Yum menu. The Yum menu is something that's coming that I actually haven't put out yet. The Yum menu is when it comes to sex and intimacy and what turns people on and what's a seduction and what's not a seduction or what's a turnoff is very, very different and from person to
Mm.
person and also changes sometimes even minute to minute, right? So we have to learn to read each other, but it's nice to have a menu of the things that pretty much work pretty much most of the time for you. And like most menus, you've got your appetizers and your starters, and you've got your mains, and you've got your desserts, right?
Huh.
And so
Yes.
my husband and I, as we one of these seasons of passions, we had a goal of identifying our top 25 turn-ons and turn-offs and sharing that with each other. And so the next 90-day game that we did that was on passion, we took that list of the 25 turn-ons and turn-offs, and we made our own individual yum menus and shared them with each other. So a yum menu is like me telling my husband, if you're wanting to be amorous with me and you want to be successful, pretty much anything on this list is good to go, right? Like my husband knows if he gets anywhere near my neck, there's like a 95% chance game on, right?
Mm.
I might not let him get near my neck, but if he can get near my neck, so he knows that. Same thing, a foot massage, right? So these are my appetizers: kiss on the neck, foot massage, things like this. A dessert menu might be for after. Like we like to do this process called the romp recap, where we not with the first hour after sex, but within the first 24 hours, we'll go for a walk or a dinner conversation or something. We'll talk about, we score our, not each other, but we score the experience for intimacy, sexiness, and technique, and in a very playful way. And
Mm.
that way it just makes communicating about sex very comfortable and natural. So I might say for dessert, I might have on there a prompt recap, or I might have in there uh, twister. We call it burrow twister, and we're big on cuddling. So I might have like, what are the things for afterwards? And then what are the things for the middle? Like my husband knows that confusion, I call it I call it pussy confusion,
Mm,
right? Because when I have no idea what's going on, I'm like, "What is he doing? What? Where? What's going on?" That's always in the middle of things, like the mains. That's always a
sure.
surefire awesome for me. So that's a yum menu is saying, beloved, no, not just here's my top turn-ons, but for starters, for mains, desserts, these are all good ones for me. Your greatest hits, so to speak.
And do they change?
Yes, as I was saying, even moment by moment. That's why
Right.
I refer to all of these practices, by the way, as games. The 90-day goals, we call that a 90-day game. And then we have all these different tools that are games, like the romp recap is a game, right? And so we're playing these games, the drama free diet or the do over, all of these different games that we play moment by moment to navigate conflict because we're human. We're going to get cranky. We didn't get sleep. Our back hurts. Something didn't go our way. We didn't get the client we wanted, whatever happens. And we tend to take it out on those that are closest to us. Right. So,
Mm.
yes, our yum menus will change. And sometimes something that's surefire won't work. And I'll be like, don't even get near my neck. That's why it's most important to be in tune and respectful, right? So you want to make sure that uh, I learned from a wonderful man named Alex Allman. He helps men with sexual energy and intimacy issues. And he once was on our show. We used to do a show called Fights Clean, Sex Dirty TV years ago. And I actually was the one episode that I wasn't on, and my husband did the interview with him. And I was on a flight coming home from France. And when I got home and we were getting frisky, I had no idea what was different, but something was wildly different. And afterwards, I was like, what did you just do that was so hot, that was so different? And what Alex had taught him is that you want to be receptive and paying attention to when your partner is being directive or receptive and
Mm.
respond immediately. So, for example, if he was trying to do something with me sexually and I was kind of shifting my body away, to listen to that and to meet that move, almost like a dance move.
Mm.
As soon as I was being directive of trying to push some way, he wanted to listen to that. But as soon as I was relaxed, he could then be directive with me almost immediately. Because if neither person is directive, you just have two wet noodles, right? Not very sexy. And if two people are being directive, you're like two rams, butting heads. But if you're listening to each other of when you're directing and when you're being receptive, that's a very sexy, energetic dance that I was like, I didn't even know it was happening, but it made a huge
Mm.
difference. So, yes, play these games, have these conversations, but the most important thing is to be present to each other. That goes both ways.
Respectful and in tune.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the, OCC? Yeah, you know me.
And by the way, though, I want to say one thing about being respectful, because I do say keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And I'm talking about being naughty and dirty in the best way possible. And
Of course.
so, like, embracing your slut, all of that is all welcome and celebrated. So we're not trying to put a damper on any naughty self expression there by any
Of
means.
course, of course. Put somebody in a box, yeah.
Yes, yes, right? Full self-expression. And one of my colleagues, Annie Lala, once said, your desires mean something good about you. Now she's stretched that into something quite long and much more elaborate. But I like it the essence of, if there is something that's truly important to you, whether that's sexual or not, you and your beloved want to be yesing each other instead of being in a place where you're fighting to get your own needs met, that you have such a culture of caring about each other's needs and not just compromising but embracing the synergy between your each other's desires, not even just your needs but your desires, that you shift at some point and now you're asking each other, you're looking for how can we have our beloved have more of what they want. I was just
Mm.
saw I have a lot of chefs in my family, and one of my cousins has been quite successful and has 3 restaurants, and he just bought his wife a horse.
Hmm.
and she's always wanted a horse. And I remember about a decade ago, he said she really wants a horse, and I just want to give her everything that she possibly could want. And that like love of wanting her to have what she wanted was so kind. And she has that for him of, yes, we have a family and two kids, but you want to open a third restaurant? Okay, I want you to have what you want. Right. And
Mm.
so it's Annie Lala calls it yesing each other. So when you have that culture of yesing each other, you keep elevating. And even when you have a conflict or a paradox, or it seems like you want opposite things, it's no longer getting your way. It's only win-win or no deal. That's
Hmm.
real love in relationship. If you're satisfied with getting your way, consider that a huge red flag. Now, if you're one of those people that always acquiesce and always whatever you want, that's a red flag too, because you're going to build up resentment
Mm.
until one day, as you say, the cereal isn't filled and the light switch is flipped and it's over.
Mm.
And the studies have shown that that's much more common for women than for men, that it's a slow, slow, slow brew, and then one day a light switch goes off and it's almost impossible to get it back. It's not impossible, but you really want to. It's very common for a woman to say, "We need to see a coach, we need to see a therapist, we need some help." And the man to say, "No, no, no." And then the woman say, "Fine, we need to see a divorce attorney." The man to say, "Okay, wait, wait, wait,
Mm.
wait, wait a minute. Let's look at this." Now, I've had definitely it be completely the other way around, and having the man being the person saying we need help, and until they say the D word, that their beloved isn't as the divorce. Yeah, I see your face like what word saying something about divorce, then they will backtrack and say, "Okay, let's look at a different approach." But when I start working with a couple, it's as quickly as possible to get them out of that mode of rolling around in the ditch and actually have them get in tune with themselves individually first. What is it that is my ideal? And that my ideal is important. We're so used to having our desires, be pushed down, that it can be so healing just to say, just you're not a 2-year-old old. Just because you want them doesn't mean you're going to get them, or you should
Mm.
have them. But your desires are important. We want to hear them. We want to know about them. And let's see how we can, at first, let's just focus on what we both want. And is that enough? For most people, they're relieved to find out that what they want individually, they actually both want. Very few couples have what I call the deal breakers. Deal breakers are often like kids or no kids, might be
Mm.
religion or geography of where they live.
Mm.
Occasionally it's money. Occasionally, these days with women who are making a lot of money and then that doesn't work for their partner for whatever reason.
Mm.
But for the most part, there aren't deal breakers, and couples are relieved to find out they want the same thing. They're just spending all of their energy focusing on what they don't want, and who's to blame for that,
Mm.
which is quite draining.
My friends and I who are, divorced, we often play a game called PCND, a pro, con, deal breaker, neutral. Are you familiar with this?
Oh, no, but that's great. I like that.
So we present something like, has a pet snake, and they'll say, well, that's a pros, kind of something that's a deal breaker. I'll never be with somebody with, or I don't know, as a police officer, or won't eat sushi, or, something as trivial as that. And you often hear like these deal breakers, like I kind of mentioned before. Oh, that's not happening. And then when it happens, it's like you just said, it's not really a deal breaker.
Well, here's the thing about love. It bites you in the butt, right?
Yeah.
It's not in fact, the last time my dad was in love, he was telling me and he just kind of burst into tears, crying. And he said, "I'm effed." It really he was just like totally effed because he was so in love. He knew that was going to have to kind of redesign everything, and he was, like you're
Mm.
now walking around with your heart out, right? So you say, "I want this," or "I want that," or "this is a deal breaker," but love has a way of making you be unreasonable. You just want to take that window of time of when you're being unreasonable, and in that window, translate what feels like was a deal breaker and actually find out, why are you actually attracted to that? What does that
Mm.
actually bring you? My husband, being the detail oriented person, it could make me crazy, but
Hmm.
I've actually really embraced it. And how I thought I was organized, he's wildly organized. I thought I was clean, he's wildly clean. People come
Mm.
to our house and they use the word impeccable.
Mm.
And I have actually a much more peaceful existence now, because and I don't try to keep the house as clean as he wants it now because he's going to get pissed at me, or I don't want to deal
Mm.
with his anxiety. I do it because he cares so much about my happiness, that if I can just do this little thing to care about his happiness, like, why wouldn't I do that? I would
Hmm.
feel like a miser, a stingy,
Mm.
selfish miser, but it wasn't like that always between us. We were, like the crabs trying to get our own needs met, right? Pulling
Mm.
each other back into the bucket. What about my needs? Well, what about my needs? Well, I need more time alone. Well, I need more time socializing. And now we've really learned to, I make sure he has enough alone time and he makes sure I have enough time socializing. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, we were at a music festival that I had gotten tickets for to soothe the pain that I wasn't going to Burning Man this year. It's a big
Ah.
event in the desert, and I've gone 17, well, back then, 16 of the last 20 years. And I wasn't going to go this year. And with the day that was opening, the event was opening, I was at a music festival, and I said to my husband, "I'm a little sad I'm not there with my friends." And he said, "Honey, socializing is for you, like exercising is for me. You love it so
Mm.
much, you really should go. Check tickets." And this meant getting on a plane the next day. And I checked the tickets, and it just so happened there was this phenomenon that so many people weren't going. There was extra tickets all over the place. And I went for 3 days, even though we had guests coming. 10
Mm.
years ago, there's no way that would have happened. He would have been triggered in 10 different ways, and I would have been mopey and sad I wasn't going. But he so genuinely wants my happiness, because I so genuinely want his happiness, that the
Mm.
culture between us is, of course you should
Mm.
have what you want. How can we, what do we need to do to get you more of what you want, and what do we need to do to get us more of what we both want collectively? That's the game.
Yeah, it sure is. It's
That's the
beautiful,
game.
Gabby. OCC?
OCC, you know me. I don't know if you remember that Naughty by Nature
I
song. You down
sure
with
do.
OPP? Yeah, you know me. I like things that are memorable and fun and can lighten the dynamic. If you're kind of calling something out or calling someone up, or hopefully you're calling yourself up, not your beloved. It's better when you do yourself. I find this is one of my top three tools in relationship. Now, the most important thing about this tool and all the tools is to use them when it's low grade conflict, so that it becomes part of your couple culture and it's just your habit of what
Mm.
you do. So when you really need it, you're going to use it. Because if you wait to use the tools until you really need them, you're not going to use them, right? It has to be habitual and something that you do over and over and over again, like the goal setting we do every 90 days. We've done that every 90 days for almost a decade now, right?
Wow.
So the same thing with this tool. One of the 90-day games goals that my husband and I played recently was, to within 5 minutes of any conflict, whether the conflict was a big one or a little one, and whether it was quote unquote his fault or my fault. So we didn't want to get into, well, you do it or
Mm.
you do it, that we would both do an OCC. And OCC stands for ownership, compassion, and creativity. And you can do this very quickly and just say, I can own that I only slept for 4 hours last night and I'm feeling really tired right now. This probably isn't the best time for me to have this conversation. I have compassion that this issue is really important to you and you need a time sensitive decision. And it's you need, there's some urgency for you around this, and that's really difficult. And
Mm.
creatively, we could move forward by having a meeting time once a week where we can talk about these things. So we really make sure that these important issues get their due justice, and we're not trying to talk about it as we're falling asleep. Right? Because, for example, my husband, after 9 p.m., I shouldn't talk to him about anything. Before
Me too.
9 a.m., he shouldn't talk to me about anything. And that was
Ah,
a good start, right? We had office
yeah.
hours, nothing after. I'd be like 10 p.m. My mom's going to come visit for a month. He'd be like, what?
Mhm.
He gets up at 6 a.m. I don't get up at 8 a.m. I get up and he'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so that was a good start of when not to talk, but then we narrowed that down to when to talk. So that OCC, ownership, compassion, creativity, that was one of our 90-day goals. And now it's one of our most common go-to tools. That and the drama-free diet, which if you don't have questions about OCC, I can tell you about the drama-free diet because that is my
Please,
number one
on my
tool.
list.
Okay, it's on the
Yes.
list. So the drama-free diet is one of the oldies but goodies. And that is what to do when blaming, shaming, or complaining comes up. Harville
Hmm.
Hendricks and Helen Hunt, two of my heroes in the relationship research world, wrote a book called Getting the Love You Want. And 10, 15 years later, wrote a book called Making Marriage Simple. And in Making Marriage Simple, they basically say that it's not the big things that ruin a marriage, it's the negativity over time. And negativity is described by them as blaming, shaming, complaining, and criticizing, including
Hmm.
constructive criticism. Let me give you some feedback, right? And so they essentially say, don't do that. Well, Raj and I wanted to know, well, what do we do instead? How do we counteract that? So when we notice that we're blaming, shaming, or complaining, what I call being blamey, shamey, complainy, and again, you want to notice it in yourself, not your beloved. But when you notice yourself being blamey, shamey, complainy, you call it out and say, oh, that was blamey, shamey, complainy. And I'll even do a pretend I'm going in reverse,
Hmm.
right? You could do a do over.
Yes.
That's one tool. And say it over again, how you would want to say it. Or you can call a drama-free diet. I call drama-free diet. And that means that you're going to say 5 positive things for the one negative thing you just said. Now, John Gottman, another favorite researcher, you may have heard of the term before, the magic ratio. And his research has shown that if you say something negative to your partner, it takes 3 positives to counteract that to get you back to neutral. But if
Hmm.
you say 5 positives, it gets you into more intimacy than you had to start. So it's
Whoa.
called the magic ratio. So when you take the blaming, shaming, and complaining and you match it with the magic ratio. So the first time this ever came up, my husband said to me, well, he didn't say to me, I snapped at him. I went into the kitchen. I usually do most of the cooking, and the trash was full. He normally takes the trash out. And I had had something at work happen, and I was just testy. And I opened the trash and how am I supposed to cook dinner when the trash is full like this? Talking to him in a way that I wouldn't want him to talk to me that way. And he did what we call let the poop stink, where he just looked at me, doesn't respond, doesn't mean it, just like looks at me. So let my poop stink. And I was like, okay, wait a second. I'm gonna do the magic ratio here. And I said, first of all, the trash is your job, not mine. So thank you for that. That's awesome. I hate taking out the trash. Second of all, the trash is most commonly taken out. I don't have to ask you to take out the trash. This is rare that this is overflowing. Third, the fact that you keep the house being so clean is so helpful, and I appreciate what a clean partner you are. Four, I appreciate just what a partner you are in life. Five, thank you for, and I'm going to go from specific to more general, general, as you can see, and you
Mm.
could just
Mm.
see it on his face as each one I say. And so I said this nasty thing that had a contract, and now I have counteracted that with these 5 positive things that bring us back to intimacy. Now, that's not to say I don't have to address the issue of the trash and all of that, but reason, there's no good reason, there's no healthy reason, there's no helpful reason to put up with talking to each other that way. And I don't mean put up with your partner talking to you that way. I mean, you put up with you talking to your partner that way. Because if you keep
Mm.
modeling healthy behavior and they don't, that's one thing, but you can't change other people. So don't you it's really unhealthy if you're pointing out all of their behavior. If that's where you're at, you need a coach big time, right?
Mm.
Because you want to be off duty so that they can coach them on that behavior and you can retire and be their partner and not their coach.
Gab, these are wonderful tools. Yum Menu, the OCC, and the drama-free diet. These are wonderful
Oh,
tools.
we also snuck in there the romp recap, right? With the
That's right,
intimacy,
romp recap
sexiness, and
post.
technique, right?
After the
Yeah.
Menu, yeah,
Yeah.
the romp recap,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's for about 10 minutes, sometime afterwards, kind of reviewing.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely amazing,
Thank
absolutely
you.
amazing. And are you at a point, I mean, how do you fend against complacency?
Habit. It's the couple culture, right? As I mentioned, these 90-day games. Right now, we're in the first week of the season of peace. And so my husband and I on our drive, I was coming from out of town. We had a 3-hour drive. And so he drove and I had the laptop open and we set our goals and we identified our top three priorities right now is finance, our family and friends, and health for the next 90 days. And we set specific goals in those areas. And we set habits that are going to support us in reaching those 90-day
Mm,
goals. And then we created visual prompts to put on my screensaver, to put on my phone, to print and put
mm,
on the bathroom mirror. So for 90 days, we're keeping this habit alive. So we're not waiting until like, oh my God, this thing that they're doing is driving me crazy. If they don't stop that, I'm going to blow my top. And instead, it's, you know what I did today? I did this thing. Or, you know what? Wow, it's been 3 weeks and I haven't done that, but this is important to me. I'm going to do that because you're keeping this declaration of what you say you want, and it's what you said you wanted. And nobody likes to be a hypocrite. Nobody wants to say, "Oh, I say I want that, but I'm not taking any action towards making that happen." So the game is you asking yourself, "How am I going to take action? What action am I not shooting on yourself, right? But what
mm.
action are you actually inspired to take?" Like right now, we did an exercise in the car where we were envisioning December 14th. That's when this 90-day game ends. So we'll have 30 days off from December 15th until January 15th. You don't want to set your goals during the holidays, you got a lot going on, but actually have these periods in these 90 days. So right now, we just spent this time on the drive to create these goals, create the habits, create the prompts and reminders, and that sets us up for the next 3 months. And that is how our life and our relationship just keeps getting better and better 17 years in, where like we cuddle every night. Our sex life is better than it's ever been. That does not happen on its own.
That's right.
That happens by habit.
So I started my business in the 90s and I wasn't paying attention to myself, Gabby, and I was working way too hard. And next thing I know, I'm 340 pounds, right? I'm a poor diet, not exercising. Doctor says to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. She had just been born. So I spent the next year, no, actually 6 or 7 months, losing about 130 pounds. People
Wow,
always
good
ask
for
me how.
you.
Yeah. And people ask me how, like they want a quick answer. And I always say discipline. That's how I lost it. I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know. It's remarkable that, you talk about these 90-day cycles and what you do to keep this relationship that's so important to you alive and the games that you play. I mean, where does discipline play a role in your life, Gab?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So I like to tell people that I'm on the pleasure path. I
Hmm,
believe that I'm a speck of dust on a speck of dust and a blip of time. And
hmm,
I've been given this gift of a body and a life where I get to dance and eat food and have sex and laugh and
mm,
swim in water and do all of these things. So I believe that it's my job to be happy. And one of the ways, and to help others be happy. And one of the ways to do that is discipline. But discipline, like I said earlier, any strength can become a weakness and any weakness can become a strength.
Mm,
So when it comes to discipline, I would use the word more of habit, because a habit, there are different personalities types. Different habit patterns work better for different personality types. And we are all different. There's a wonderful book by a woman named Gretchen Rubin. Yep, Gretchen Rubin is right there. And blanking on the title of the book, it'll come to me. But essentially what she says is that there's like 23, 26 different ways to build a habit. And I used to think, learning the science of habit building, there was like, these are the habits and everybody was the same. But we're different. For example, I'm a bit more of the rebel personality. Don't tell me what to do. I don't even like to tell
mm,
myself what to do. So I don't like having goals that have me have to be a purist. So when I hear discipline, I hear 100%. And if I'm at
mm,
90%, that's not good enough. So when I hear habit for myself, I've set myself up that 90% is what works for my personality type. And so I'll say I'm going to eat 90% really healthy and whole foods, and I'm going to have a 10% total indulgence, right?
mm,
For people, that's a nightmare. What's that expression? Uh, 100% is easy, 99% is a bitch, right?
mm,
And for some people, that's the way. And that pure discipline is really empowering, because if you have to decide, is this my 10%? Is this the time where I'm doing it? It makes you crazy, right? Whereas if somebody told me I'm off chocolate for a month, that would make me crazy. So finding out what works for you for your discipline, but not using it as a weapon to beat yourself up
mm,
or should on yourself, which is why I
mm,
like the culture of a game, and it's being a habit. So you're like, let's say you achieve 23% of your goals. It's still closer to what you said you wanted. I think if I'm achieving over 80% of my goals, I'm not playing big enough. And I want to rejigger my goals so that I'm actually getting a lower score. So it's not that you're designing things to be perfect or to fix yourself, but that you're playing a game to enjoy life and help others. It's actually why I do what I do, is because I like to make a difference for couples who make a difference. Because
mm,
if you're lit up in your life, then you're out there making the difference in the world. And I can impact so many others, because a CEO is, not going through a divorce, or, a matriarch of a family isn't, distracted by the stress in their marriage, and they can really be there for their family because they love their life and love their relationship. That's the ripple effect that I am for the world of. There's nothing more important than love, right? I mean, if life is working and your relationship isn't, or you want a relationship and you don't have one, then nothing else is very satisfying. And if
mm.
everything else is going to hell in a handbasket, but your relationship is rock solid, you feel like you can get through anything. So either way, you're to benefit if you build and support your relationship, or if you want to be in one. For some people, they don't want to be in one. So I want to be clear to those people out there.
Mm.
That's totally fine too, and a very valid choice if that's what works for you, because we're all very different. Not
God,
one
what a
cookie cutter.
remarkable. That's for sure. Yeah, what a wonderful perspective on discipline. It's a habit. You're a speck on a speck, and it's not punishing, not self-punishing. It's
The pleasure
a very
path.
interesting thing. Yeah, the pleasure path. That's
Well,
what you're
I'm
on.
very big on neuroscience and brain research and behavior, and the research
Mm,
on a lot of the research on happiness shows that it is based on not your current status, but your progress. So your wealth, for example, is not based on how much money you have, but if your money is getting larger or getting smaller, right?
mm,
And so that's why progress is important. All the research on goals show it's actually not reaching your goals that's so satisfying. It's pursuing your goals. So
mm,
having a habit of pursuing goals is what's going to give you the most happiness in life. In fact, I'll leave you with this great resource. There's a book called The How of Happiness by a woman named Sonia, and a very long, beautiful Russian sounding name. She might even be Russian. She was a kind of protege of Martin Seligman, who wrote the book Learned Optimism. But her book is called The How of Happiness, and it's about the 12 practices that have been proven to increase your happiness. So I highly recommend that one as well. For a long time, I had all 12 of those in my calendar. Every Friday, it would come up with a reminder that said, I'm hip to happiness. And I would
Hmm.
just look and see how well am I doing in those different areas? Which ones am I naturally high in? Which ones am I traditionally and low in? And which ones do I just happen to be low in now? Avoiding social comparison, avoiding overthinking and social comparison. That was one that I used to have to watch out for. Um, Expressing gratitude and cultivating optimism. Those two come to me quite naturally. Exercise doesn't come to me naturally, right? But looking at what are the things that we know make you happy, and then to put them in as a habit, not as a purist, but as a practice.
Gaby Sundra, what motivates you?
Well, the first word that came to mind is love.
Yeah, it sure does.
Because really, that's what matters. That's what I'm willing to drop everything for. If my mom
Hmm.
needs me, or, something's going on with my niece or a family friend, or when even a stranger and I hear a love story and I get so moved. When we pass, that's what we really leave behind is the love that others have for us. That's what lives on. So I think also just my grandmother used to say to me growing up when I was a kid, do good in the world, do good in the world. And to me, with nothing being more enjoyable or more high impact in your life than love, what else would I do and spend my time doing than help people move past when they think their relationship isn't worth it? And to show them that the very thing that looked like a problem could actually be the path to greater levels of play, peace, and passion, and just joy and fulfillment and satisfaction in love and in life.
How do you measure success, Gabby?
Success is doing what makes you happy, right? And I believe it's my job to be happy and to help others be happy. Sometimes that means alleviating a burden. But I am my
Mm.
most happy when I am my most self-expressed. And I am
Hmm.
my most self-expressed when I'm living my values, which are fun, growth, and contribution. So for me, often that shows up as hosting, right? If I'm hosting an event where people get to meet each other and learn and grow, like I used to do these events called a dinner dance party, fireside chat, where we'd come together and have a meal, and then we'd have a panel discussion, and then we'd have a dance party, right? And so that's true happiness, is being yourself with people you love in a way that makes a difference for the greater good.
Mm.
That's success to me.
Pleasure, love, happiness, all general themes. You have the glow of it. Your smile, your disposition, how you promote. It's wonderfully contagious, Gabby. Thank you so much for your time today. I really, really enjoyed it. How can anybody get in touch with you, whoever's listening?
Well, I'm so glad. Thanks for asking. But on that note of you saying that, yes, my approach is the aiming for awesome, but I do also want to celebrate and salute the shadow workers out there, because there's absolutely a place, an important place for that. And the therapists
Mm.
who are doing work on the past, as a coach, I'm present and forward focused. What do you want? And so I just want to also honor that, because yes, there's the positive and the forward focus, but sometimes, that's why I have a process called venting for victory, because sometimes you just got to get the
Mm.
rage out, right? Just not on each other. Get the uglies out,
Mm.
not on each other. But for those who want to find out more, the core of what we do is that forward focus. So our company is called For Better Love, and that's forbetter.com, not forbetterlove.com. And you can reach me, Gabby, Gaby. We actually have a special gift for your audience. So if they go to forbetter.love/discipline, They'll see a free gift for them there, and they can reach out with any further questions on those resources. What I'm going to put on there for you is a tool to help people create that vision that I mentioned for creating then your goals for 90 days. I have a masterclass and a playbook that I normally sell for $99 that I'll go ahead and put on there for free for your audience.
How nice. How nice. Gabby, thank you so much. You've given me so much to think about, and I really, really appreciate your time. I hope maybe one day your husband, you and I will all have a cup of coffee, talk a little bit more.
I hope so. I hope so. You said you're in New York. Is that what you said?
That's right. I'm in the Northeast, yeah, and then
Uh,
in the winter I go down south. I know you're going to be away for a little while, so perhaps when you get back.
yes, we did just do the East Coast, and we will be doing the East Coast in February. So we love New York, and we have family in Boston, and our and very close friends in Delray Beach, Florida. So once we get out to the East Coast, we try and hit the up and down the coast before we head the long trek back. But that would be
Yeah,
fun.
that's
That would be fun, Joe.
yeah.
I really appreciate you hosting and all you have to offer on success and discipline. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Gabby. You be well. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.